Fred, how many buildings do you currently have in Los Angeles?
Maybe 300 properties comprising about 5,000 apartments, approximately 2 million square feet of retail. I find the harder I work, the luckier I become. I still cold call.
No.
Yes, I do. What do you want to do with this property going forward? Now I've given you information that you may or may not have. I like the inner city. I like value. You know, they made a movie a couple years back about getting out of Compton. I got in. In high school, I started buying and selling and flipping cars. Bought a 65 Mustang. I bought it for $500 and I drove it for a year. And I turned around and sold it for $1,200 and it ruined my life.
Welcome to the podcast. My name is Taylor Avakian, and I'm here with my esteemed guest, Fred Leeds. Fred, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Taylor, for the invitation. I'm honored to be here, and I hope when we're done with this podcast, you say, well, I didn't waste an hour.
I don't think anyone's going to be saying that after this.
Okay.
Fred, how many buildings do you currently have in Los Angeles, or do you own, and what is the total breakdown of what those buildings are?
Maybe 300 properties comprising about 5,000 apartments and approximately 2 million square feet of retail. And that's in Southern California, Arizona, and a small project in New York.
Small projects in New York. Okay. And why those markets in particular?
Great question. New York was a C Corp with a zero basis that I bought into for peanuts on the bar. Taylor, do you know what that expression means? Peanuts on the bar. How much are the peanuts on a bar?
Free.
That's right. So I bought into zero basis stock at a very low price. A property that was mismanaged, a block of real estate in Queens, Cross Bay Boulevard and Liberty Avenue, which is John Gotti's neighborhood. I earned my bones there. And I'll have to explain what that means.
Yeah. Can you explain that in further detail?
Yeah. It's poor white and Italian.
Okay.
And it's a neighborhood that people don't lock their doors because if you commit a crime there, you disappear.
Got it.
And it's Queens, and it's where the subway comes up out of the ground from Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the boroughs of Manhattan, one of the 5 boroughs. And I have retail and apartments there. And I was getting these $100 tickets. Someone would drop a cigarette butt or a napkin on the sidewalk, and they ticket the property owner. And I was getting 5 or 6 of them a week. And I'd call the council office. I want to meet with a councilman, and they wouldn't meet with me. And I kept getting these tickets. What do I do? Do I take a full-time employee to watch people drive? And it's a 5-pointed intersection. It looks like Times Square. So I get this offer from AT&T for a corporate store. But across the street, it's a 3rd-generation young Italian man who has a family, and he has a Verizon wireless franchise. So I fly out. This is 6 years ago, in the dead of winter. I got my trench coat on, and I walk in to the Verizon wireless store. And this guy looks up at me and says, "Hello, Mr. Leeds." I have no idea how he knew my name.
Uh-huh.
And I went over to his counter, and I pull out of my trench coat a lease from AT&T, and I put it on his counter. And I said, "What happens if I sign this lease?" And the tears start running down his face. He says, "It puts me out of business." So I pull out a pen, and I write "rejected" on the lease. I leave it on his counter, and I walk out. In the last 6 years, it doesn't snow on my sidewalk. I've had no tickets. I have had no graffiti. In the fall, the leaves don't even fall in front of my property.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how I earn my bones.
How did you, that's
Usually
incredible.
earning your bones means you've killed somebody.
Yeah.
Right?
But that's incredible.
But I recognize who the neighborhood belongs to.
Yeah.
I might own the property. I might own the block.
Yeah.
But it's not my hood.
Can you explain how you bought the property with zero money?
Wasn't zero money.
Okay.
It was a mismanaged property. And the management company was taking some of the rents.
Mm-hmm.
And there were sandwich leases. OTB was a tenant, off-track betting. Italians made $1 billion a year on it.
And this is a retail site.
Sorry?
This is a retail
retail and apartments.
Got it. Mixed use.
So the hard corner was OTB, off-track betting between two race courses. And a very busy intersection. And so OTB was sold to the state of New York. And within 10 years, they bankrupted it.
Wow.
How do you bankrupt the VIG?
Yeah.
Making 10%.
You're the house.
You're the house.
What do you do?
How do you go broke on that?
That's crazy.
So the state of New York unionized. They moved corporate office to Park Avenue. Then they opened up all their new locations in A and B sites. But that's not where the volume was. And within 10 years, they went bust.
Wow.
My tenant there now is Popeyes, and they do great business.
So how did you get the building?
Right place, right time. You know, I find the harder I work, the luckier I become.
Interesting how that works.
Yeah, you got to get up early and work late. I only work half a day.
Yeah.
From 8 to 8. So, you know, there's no solution to success without putting the time in.
Do you still work half the day?
I still cold call.
No.
Yes, I do.
Who are you cold calling?
And I know how to cold call.
I believe that.
And when someone cold calls me, if they don't know what they're doing, they lose me within 15 seconds.
Give me the cold call script.
Okay. Taylor, it's Fred Leeds. I own a property adjacent to yours. I notice you have some downspouts that are knocked off the roof drains. And when it rains, the water going down the side of your building is going to give you a mold problem. You're either going to fix that, or maybe you would like to broker sell the property and maybe sell it to me. What do you want to do with this property going forward? Now I've given you information that you may or may not have known.
Mm-hmm.
I've given you an opportunity to fix a problem before it becomes a bigger problem. And you know I've seen the property.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who calls me up and says, Mr. Leeds, what are your parameters on your future acquisitions? Click. That's 50% of the time.
Uh-huh.
People don't know what they're doing.
Uh-huh. If you were to cold call yourself, right?
I'd be in trouble. I'd be offended.
What would get you to have a conversation with someone?
Something similar to what I just said.
Similar to that.
Yeah.
Value.
If you're not giving me value in that first 10 seconds,
yeah,
you lose me.
Yeah. What else besides the actual property itself would be valuable to you as an owner of where you're at?
Well, you're not going to talk to me about cap rates, the direction of the marketplace. I don't need to have that conversation. I'm a buyer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really not a seller.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Leeds, I own the property next to yours. I'm willing to pay above market for your property. All right. You got my attention.
Yeah.
I bought 18 months ago a Pep Boys in San Diego, in Mission Hills.
Mm-hmm.
And I paid a market rate cap, around a 5 cap, but it was a ground lease. And the rent was probably 25% of market. And the family that owned it had owned it for 30 some odd years. Twins. They died in their 90s. And the kids were liquidating. So I bought the property. But there was a investor who owned a couple 100,000 square feet surrounding this property.
Mm-hmm.
And he called me up and he was angry at me. How did you get that property? I've been after it for a few decades. How did you do it? I said, well, what's important is I did it. I said, if you've been after it and you didn't get it, make me an offer. So he's right now $1 million over what I paid for it.
Jeez.
And I'm still pushing him.
It's called leverage right there.
Well, how badly do you want it?
Yeah. That, I mean, shoot, you, clearly your experiences over your career has allowed you to have a level of understanding of business as a whole that not a lot of people get to understand.
You know, Taylor, I'm blessed, and I'll tell you why. I love what I do.
Yeah.
Love the interaction. I love retail. I love apartments. I deal with Crips and Bloods and Cholos and gangbangers, but I deal with amazing people. I deal with people like Maxine Waters. Boy, I actually have a crush on her.
Yeah.
She's bright. She's capable. She gets it. She comes from a different direction.
Mm.
So she walked into my office 5-6 years ago. My offices are on Crenshaw Boulevard, Martin Luther King.
In LA?
In LA, in South Central. Let me ask you, Taylor, but I want the truth. Have you ever been south of the 10 freeway before?
Walking properties, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You'd be shocked how many people have never been south of the 10 free.
Yeah.
Right? In the inner city.
Mm-hmm.
I like the inner city. I like value. You know, they made a movie a couple years back about getting out of Compton.
Uh-huh.
I got in.
Because that's where the value is.
I found value. I bought 101 units. This guy wanted he wanted $10 million, $100,000 a unit. And
What year is this?
This is maybe 10 or 11 years ago.
Okay.
Wanted 100,000 a unit, 101 units. I offered him $6 million. He said, well, it's not what I want. I said, well, I know it's not what you want, but here's my deal. It's all cash, as is, no warranties, no reps. And I'm not a tire kicker, and I'm not going to waste your time. But that's what the property's worth to me. So will you pay more? I said, no, but I'll pay less. He says, and you're not a tire kicker? I said, no, I'm not a tire kicker. And frankly, I'll buy it without contingencies other than title. And really, you're not going to waste my time? I said, no, I'm not going to waste your time. He says, but it's not what I want. I said, but what you want is to sell the property. He says, yes. I said, well, that's what I'm offering you.
And this was direct?
Direct.
You cold called them?
Yes.
Wow.
You know what he said to me? It's yours.
Oh my gosh.
So I buy the property, and after the close, he says, have lunch with me. I said, only if I get to buy. So we sit down and we have lunch. He says, you didn't give me what I wanted, but you gave me what I wanted. He said, it was much less than I thought I'd ever sell it for. He said to me, I have a brain tumor, and I'm in remission, and I can't handle the management. My family can't do it. The property has some gang activity, some minor shootings from time to time, and some problems, and the police, and some drug activity, and a little prostitution. I said, I'm aware of all that. I said, I went by the property, and I know how to deal with it. I feel comfortable. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity. What else do you have that you would like to sell me? He says, well, I don't want to sell you anything else. He says, because I'm in remission. He says, and I hope never to call you again. But if you do get a call from me, it's going to be because I'm not in remission anymore. So a few years went by, and I got a call from him. He says, do you still have interest in my other properties? He said, I got 14 other buildings. I said, yes, I'll make you an offer for all of them. And I did. I made him an offer for all of them. He said, it's not what I want, but it's what I need.
Wow.
He said to me, I'm being sued by the city for non-conforming apartments. I have some mold litigation. I have some other lawsuits at the properties. I have some vacancies. I have some deferred maintenance. I said, I understand. I said, my offer will make me responsible for the litigation, make me responsible for the mold issues, make me responsible for the deferred maintenance at the property, and whatever the issues are with the retail tenants and the apartments and the SROs. Do you know what an SRO is?
I do.
Single room occupancy, bathroom down the hallway, bring your own toilet paper, and a kitchen, one kitchen for everyone to use per floor.
Yep.
And it sure is a lot nicer than a park bench. And I have people that live 30, 40 years in an SRO.
Wow.
So they could figure that out 100 years ago in Los Angeles, but today they want to build for $1 million a unit. That I can't figure out how the economics work without bankrupting the city and the state. But maybe that's why we have a bankrupt city and state.
Yeah. And we'll definitely get into that. But that's incredible. You clearly understand people. And I think
bought the portfolio, and it was a phenomenal opportunity. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I like the inner city. I like to find properties that are mismanaged, to find properties that I can add value.
How well did you do on the portfolio?
Still own it. I took one building at Central and 32nd. I knocked it down, and I built a warehouse shoe store, WSS, my 5th location with them.
Oh.
You know, when you build retail or when you rent retail, if the retailer gets a bad result, next time you have a location, they don't respond. They don't return your call. But if you give them A locations and volume and successful stores, they call you back and say, Mr. Leeds, what else do you have? It was 1998, 1999. I was reminiscing about my best friend in college who had passed away. His name was Suho Cho. Suho, in college freshman year, said to me, my father, #1 taxpayer in all of Korea, my mother, #5. His family owned Korean Airlines
Wow.
and Hanjin, which was her trading company. And their corporate offices at the time were on Wilshire and Burlington, near downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And Suho transferred from Pepperdine in Malibu to USC. And when I got married, he was in my wedding party. And we were very close. Sophomore year of college, he met a very attractive redhead and married her. Bought a house on Ringe Road in Playa del Rey. And I'd go to his home for dinner, and we'd sit down at the dining room table, and all of a sudden the window would rattle. And then the table would rattle, and he'd look at me, he'd say, DC-10. And 10 minutes later, the window would rattle, and the table would rattle, and he'd say 747. Of course, it was his family's DC-10. It was family 747. To him, it was music, Korean Airlines.
Wow.
Right? To me, it was like, why would anyone in their right mind live here? So he was married a couple of years, maybe 1 year, when his father found out about the wedding. Called him back to Seoul. Said, Suho, I give you 2 choices. First choice, annul the marriage. Come back to Seoul. I will arrange for you to have a wife. Suho said, but father, I love this girl. That's why I married her. What's second choice? Father looked at him and said, good luck. Very sad. Because Suho really liked her a lot.
Wow.
Loved her. After the marriage was annulled, he moved back to Seoul, married the daughter of the largest hotel chain in South Korea, had 3 daughters, and killed himself. And as a parent, and I have a lot of kids, you learn how hard you can push your children.
Mm-hmm.
And when you push too hard, it's not a good result.
Mm-hmm.
Suho was just pushed too far.
Wow.
So I was reminiscing about my buddy Suho, and I was on Wilshire in Burlington. And I noticed next to their corporate office, homeless encampments, a very depressed part of Los Angeles, but the most densely populated area of Los Angeles, west of the Mississippi. So from that drive-by, I bought 8 acres adjacent, and I paid $14 million for the dirt. And I used to get stopped by the police while I was there. What are you doing here? Are you here for cocaine, for crack, for prostitution? What are you here for? It was not easy.
Jeez.
And that was 1997, 1998. I'm doing this assemblage, 2 square blocks. And so I would tell the police, I'm in real estate. I'm an investor, and I'm here trying to create job opportunities and opportunities for myself. So we bought the 8 acres, paid $14 million for the dirt, which today is worth $140 million. Chicken shit to chicken salad. And my first lease was with Home Base, and while under construction for 140,000 square feet, they went broke. So I have a construction loan. I bet the farm on this deal.
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do? So I cut a deal with Kmart. They flew out. $18 a square foot, 20-year lease, 10% bumps every 5 years. They came out, these 3 guys, met them at the Hilton by the airport.
Mm-hmm.
The guy took a pen, crossed out $20, wrote $12 a square foot flat, 20 years. My broker at the time looked at me and said, sign it, Fred. You're not going to do any better. So my partner in the deal, David Oved, of blessed memory, passed away a couple of years ago. And that by itself is another story I'll share with you. He says, Fred, what do you want to do? I said, well, let's go outside and talk about it. I said, gentlemen, we'll be back. And we went outside. And David says, so what are we going to do? I said, let's talk about it in my car. So we walk over, we sit in the car. And I turn on the ignition, I put it in drive, we start driving. I said, fuck them. So while in the car, heading back to our office, I get a hold of Home Depot. Greg George,
Uh-huh.
big guy, played football for USC. Great man,
Mhm.
great man. He says, Fred, I've turned you down 4 times. Why do you keep calling me? I said, because I know it's the perfect site for Home Depot. He said, well, how do you know that? I said, well, I operate a lot of apartment buildings. All my handymen live within a couple blocks of this site. I said, it will be one of your top grossing stores in the chain. He says, you're really convinced on that? I said, how convinced were you when you played football at USC? He says, okay, you got me. So they signed a lease subject to the demands of the city of Los Angeles, who came back at me and said, you need a subterranean garage for additional parking because it'll be crowded. I said, okay. I went back to Home Depot. I said, it's $4 million to build this additional garage. I'll put up 2 and you're going to put up a 2 million. Give me a check. And they did. So we built a little over 300,000 square feet Home Depot, Food for Less, Rite Aid, McDonald's, other retail tenants, including a Panda Express.
Wow.
One of their top 3 in their whole chain.
Jeez.
And that's how, when I spoke to Andy,
Yeah.
the guy who owns all of the Panda Expresses.
You told him that.
Yeah. And so he asked me for additional locations. But we built this project. The councilman at the time was Michael Hernandez. I said, Michael, how many premium coffee houses do you have in the first district? He said, none. You don't have one Starbucks? He says, none. So Magic Johnson, urban coffee houses. It was called Urban Starbucks. The only franchisee in the history of Starbucks. He opened up his first store in my center.
Wow.
And it was one of the highest grossing Starbucks in the whole chain. In fact, the numbers were so high that Starbucks bought back from Magic Johnson his franchise.
Oh my gosh.
And but Magic Johnson, not only is he a great man, but his business acumen is incredible.
Yeah. Clearly.
Yeah.
He's built something
very,
incredible.
very, very special guy. And he turned me down a few years ago. I said, Magic, our country needs leadership. Be our president. He says, shut up, Fred. So,
Can you walk me through how you started in this? Because clearly, I mean, 5,000 units, 2 million square feet, like it's incredible. How did it begin? What was the initial? I know in college, I believe you started.
Taylor, let me say this. I'm not a member of the Lucky Sperm Club.
Okay.
My mother's a retired school teacher. My parents got divorced when I was 5. I'm one of 4 kids. I had a womb mate, my twin sister. In fact, when we were 3 years old, someone asked her why I was born first. I'm 5 minutes older. She said, because I let him. My mother was president of the Women's Liberation Chapter of Los Angeles. I learned equality at an early age. My sister had to play Little League with me. I had to take ballet with her. And that wasn't so easy. I can still point, but it's not very pretty. In high school, my mother sat my twin sister and I down and said, I can only afford to send one of you to college. Fred, go get a job. I said, Mom, I think I can pay my own way. She says, well, then go to college. In high school, I started buying and selling and flipping cars. I started out when I was 14. I bought a 1965 Mustang. Paid $500 for it. I was
How'd you get $500?
I was a bus boy in Westwood at a restaurant. I
Ah.
lied about my age, and I got a job as a bus boy, and I saved up $500, and I bought a 65 Mustang. And I bought it for $500, and I drove it for a year, and I turned around and sold it for $1,200, and it ruined my life. Here I am. So I started flipping cars. I bought a 58 XK150 Jaguar, and I've had a couple hundred Jaguars. XK140s, 150s, E-Type Roadster Series 1, 2, and 3. I broke cars down to 4 variables: interior, exterior, price, and mechanics. 3 out of 4, you make money. The less you have to do, the better off you are. The faster you can move the car, the higher internal rate of return. I've had opportunities with cars. I wish I never sold them. Porsches, 356 A's and B's and C's. The Speedsters, 55 to 57. Cars that I bought for $3,500, $3,000, $2,500 that today are $500,000. I was offered a 1967 275 GTB long nose wheelbase Ferrari that wasn't running $5,000 today. That car is $2.5 million.
Oh my gosh.
So there are lessons to be learned about hard assets, and buying depreciating assets that appreciate. And that's a key. I love planes. I love jets, but I don't want to buy a depreciating asset that depreciates.
Real estate.
So there's a reason why I like real estate. It's real.
Yeah.
And I remember pet rocks. At least you got a rock. With Bitcoin, you don't even get a rock. So
I take it you're not a fan of cryptocurrency.
I don't understand cryptocurrency. It's not that I'm not a fan. I don't understand it.
Got it.
And what I don't understand, I stay away from.
Yeah.
You got to do what you know. I have a lot of people say, let me make you rich. I am rich. Well, let me make you richer. Well, if I want to be richer, I'll just buy more buildings.
Yeah.
That's what I know. When you get out of your area of expertise, you get hammered.
Yeah.
I want to give you an example of that. There was a guy named Carl Karcher, going back half a century. He started a company called, a restaurant chain called Carl's Jr. He did very well with it, made a lot of money. He lived in Orange County. And a developer came along and said, I'd like to bring you in as a partner. You don't have to come up with any money. All you have to do is collateralize your stock. And by collateralizing your stock, I'll borrow against your stock and we'll build these housing developments. Well, ultimately, what happened was the housing developments went bad. He lost his stock and he lost the control of his own company. Stick to what you know.
Yeah.
When you go out of your area of expertise, you get hammered.
So when did you start building your expertise in apartments? How did you start the real estate growth?
Back to flipping cars.
Okay.
When I went from Pepperdine to USC, I joined a fraternity house. Why did I join a fraternity house? They had a big parking lot, and they had pledges. And the pledges would polish my cars that were in the parking lot, free labor. And I gave a percentage of the profits to the fraternity house. It was the best of all worlds.
Wow.
I studied biochemistry, and for math, the limits and the functions and the differentials, it was time for me to work my mind to see what was there, and to see if I could analyze. And with that analysis, could I move that analysis into a direction, even if it's not medicine, if it isn't inorganic or organic chemistry or biochemistry, what can I do with my mind? And could I create a spread? And with the automobiles, I could do that. I was making so much money flipping cars that not only was I able to pay for my education, I had excess funds. So I bought a little duplex my sophomore year of college.
How much?
$120,000. I took the first trust deed subject to because it was a loan, and I didn't qualify for a loan because I didn't know what a tax return was.
Do you know
all my flipping at the time was for cash?
Do you know what's so funny? Okay, subject to is like a very hot thing now.
Yes, it is.
And you were doing this back in the 70s?
I was doing that in the 70s. You had the Tucker versus Lassen and the Wellenkamp decisions, whether it was a state-chartered savings and loan or federally chartered would determine whether or not you could take a loan subject to or whether or not you could not take a loan subject to. And if the bank found out, they could call the loan, and then what do? Do you pay it off if you have the money, or do you lose the property? Well, when you're young, you have a lot of time and very little money. When you get old, like me, you have a lot of money but much less time. So you need to utilize your time differently. So back then, I bought this duplex with a peekaboo ocean view in Capistrano Beach. What was my first lesson? I had to drive an hour and a half down there to fix a toilet. Not a good utilization of my time. But I bought it for $120,000. Many years later, I did a 1031 exchange, $350,000 into a 12-unit building and 3 houses in Hollywood, which I still own. That today is probably worth $4 million.
Wow.
And on 3/4 of an acre across the street from a park. The 3 houses were crack houses. And the park was the Longpre Park, prostitution, drugs. It was a mess. And I'm thinking, how am I going to clean up this property? How am I going to do it? So I called up the Department of Parks and Recreation, and I expressed to them what was going on at the park, and I had a solution for their problem. We needed to turn on the sprinkler system from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. And they were willing to do that. And I evicted the crack houses, turned the property around, and I own it to this day. They're beautiful homes. They rent for lots of money. The park now has a fence around it, but there are no more drug issues.
Wow.
It's because we turn the sprinklers on at night.
I feel like they should do that to MacArthur Park.
Well, we can talk about MacArthur Park because Michael Hernandez was the councilman at the time when I was building the Wilshire Union Center.
Mm-hmm.
And the city of Los Angeles came along and started a condemnation proceeding on my property. They were going to take it from me, and they wanted to build a high school there. So I went to Councilman Hernandez, and I said, Michael, this center is going to generate 600 really good paying jobs. Food for Less, Union, Home Depot, great paying jobs. I said, and we're sensitive enough to build the first day labor center in the country so that the day laborers that are waiting to work for, at the time, $10 an hour will not get extorted by MS-13 or the 18th Street gangs. They'll have a place where they can learn English. They'll have bathrooms for dignity. They'll have a place to go when it's raining. They'll have a place where they can organize, and people can hire them from the day labor center. I said, I need your help. I need your support. These jobs are important in this community. They can build a high school somewhere else, maybe a block away on Wilshire. Here's some property. Here are the owners. They can condemn that property out and not take mine. I hired an attorney who specialized in condemnation proceedings, and he helped me fight back the city, and we prevailed, and they went elsewhere. In fact, they condemned out the other property.
Wow.
And we finished our project, which we own to this day and operate.
Jeez. So clearly relationships are super important for you. I want to talk about, for my understanding, and you can clarify this, right? Because I know your brother owns
Benny.
Yeah, Ben Leeds.
Yes.
Owns just as much, if not similar properties. Did you guys buy together, or what's the story with your brother and you guys both own a lot of real estate?
We're competitive.
Uh-huh.
You know what? I want to go on the record. I am really proud of my brother.
Yeah.
Love my brother. We didn't talk for a few decades because we were so competitive. And he was the number one agent over at John Douglas in the investment division there. And I was the number one agent at Fred Sands in the investment division. I was there from 1978 to 86. Out of 1,000 agents, I was number one or number two in sales. And I took my commissions. This is, I'm jumping the shark here.
Yeah.
I was flipping cars. Junior year, I bought the real estate reference guide for $2.95 on a Friday. On a Monday, I took the exam, passed. Went to Fred Sands, said, give me a job. He says, what's your history? What do you know about real estate? I said, I can spell it. I said, but I'm willing to work harder than anyone else in your company. And I will show you the numbers. Give me the opportunity. And so I was there 6 months. The manager of the investment division at the time, his name was Yehuda Saraf, brought me into his office. He says, Fred, you're fired. You have no ability. This is not a career for you. You should be a school teacher. And I said, Yehuda, interest rates have been moving. I said, I had no clients. I didn't know what I was doing. I still really don't know what I'm doing. I said, but I do have the ability. I said, I want you to give me more time. Give me another month. I think I have some things that'll come together. So there's a closet in the back. It's large enough for you and a couple other desks. You can stay there another 30 days. And then during those 30 days, I start closing deals. And the rest is history. But I believed enough in myself. Sometimes you need the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
You need to put in the time. And it was 1980. So this started in 1978. I went to work July of 78 for Fred Sands. 1980, I was beginning to have pretty good income from commission dollars. I didn't spend my commission dollars on new cars, new clothes, new trips, vacations. It didn't go up my nose. It didn't go for expensive restaurants. I saved my shekels, my money, and I knew a neighborhood I wanted to live in. I wanted to buy a house between San Vicente and Montana and between 26th Street and Wilshire. And I knocked on every door in that neighborhood. On weekends, I would knock on every door. And I found a guy between Alta and Margarita who was 54 years of age. And he wanted to rent his house out for, I think, $900. And I offered him $1,500. It was 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, 1,616 square feet, built in the 1920s. The guy's name was Ed Driver, and his father was C.W. Driver, big construction company. And Ed Driver had this house, 1980. He was 54 years of age, and he wanted to rent it out. And I said, look, I'm going to offer you $1,500, but I want a 3-year lease. I want to accrue half the rent toward the down payment. I want you to carry back 80% of the purchase price for 10 years at 10%. And those are my terms. And our acquisition price we're going to determine today, $280,000. As you think about this, I want you to call your accountant if you have any interest and find out what the tax benefits are once you turn 55, which of course we will execute this agreement, and I don't buy the property until you're at least 55 years of age. Even though it was a 3-year option, I wouldn't exercise that option for the first year. So he says, I'll call you back tomorrow. He accepted my terms. I moved into the house. 3 years later, I executed the option, bought the house for $280,000, had my mother and my stepfather come for the first time to see this house. As my stepfather would call it, a chalupki. He was a physician, the most kind man I've ever known, brilliant. And during Kristallnacht, he was from Austria, from Vienna. He was hung and left for dead by the Nazis. They hung him, his whole family, and he survived because a rope broke. And he got to America with his best friend, Maximilian Hoffman. I want you to look up that man.
Okay.
Maximilian Hoffman, who received a percentage off of every BMW sold in the Northern Hemisphere. One of the greatest car guys the world has ever known. I want you to look up, because my oldest son, his name is Maximilian.
Yeah.
After Maximilian Hoffman.
So
I exercise the option on this house. I buy this house, and my mother and my stepfather come to see the house. And my stepfather says to my mother, how could anyone in their right mind pay $280,000 for this halupki? 1,616 square feet.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a 50 by 150 lot. Standard for the era. And my mother said, so what did you pay for your first house? And he thought about it. He said, $28,000. And my mother, who's so smart, said, and what did your father pay for his first house? And he thought about it, and he said, $2,800. So Taylor, would my son have to pay $2.8 million for that house?
No.
Yes.
More.
Well, now more.
Yeah.
And his son,
yeah.
would he have to pay $28 million for that house?
I hope not.
The answer is yes. And that's why I'm in real estate. We don't think in terms of generations or the time value of money.
Mm-hmm.
But it's real.
Mm-hmm.
It's not Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not stocks.
Yeah.
It's real. And that's why I'm in real estate.
So you think differently, because at that time you creatively figured out a structure that would work for that guy. How did you start thinking in these creative ways to make things happen? What was your...
You're asking me the right questions. I'm going to skip, because that's what my mind does.
Yeah.
I'm a little disjointed.
That's okay.
I'm going to skip to a lecture that was given by Michael Milken.
Okay.
And this was at the Milken Institute. And he has his 1 week every year.
Yeah, it was like the last week or 2 weeks ago.
That's right. And I highly recommend, if you can go.
Yeah.
And it's about economics and business. It's about medicine. It's about education. I've been blessed to know Michael Milken and his wife, Lori. And I can say this most sincerely. If I had half his IQ, I would be brilliant. Okay. He's so off the chart.
Yeah.
So brilliant. I don't know anyone who's done more for our world than Michael Milken.
Wow.
When it comes to medicine, junk bonds,
Yeah.
and education, I could go on and on and on about this guy's brilliance. And I could tell you some great stories about him.
Yeah.
One in particular I'm going to tell you. I one day asked him, "What are you investing in, Michael?" He said, "I just bought a couple thousand units in I think it was Hamburg, someplace in Germany." I said, "Why did you do that?" He said, I think there'll be appreciation. He said, "But in addition, I like the mark more than the dollar." So he was thinking in two different planes.
Wow.
Two.
Wow.
His mind works
Yeah.
in two planes, not one.
Crazy.
Most people can't even think in one plane.
That's
and
insane.
and so not only did he make money on the mark, he made money on the apartments. It turned out great for him. And I thought about how he would look at an opportunity and think outside of the box.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're just following the herd, you'll be slaughtered with the rest of the herd. But if you're ahead of the herd and you're looking at direction, hopefully you're going to go where you're not going to get slaughtered. You're going to go where the opportunity is. You have to be there first. You have to find that opportunity. You have to see what other people don't see. Our money is made between hindsight and foresight.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone can say, "If I had only bought this," or "if I had only bought that." Well, I bought it.
How do you cultivate that mindset of thinking outside the box? How do you train that?
Well, there are a lot of people that think outside of the box, and some of them are right, and some of them are dead bang wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a party at Mitch Julis's house, started Canyon Partners with Josh Friedman. And this was 17, 18 years ago. And I met this guy from South Africa, 6'3", 6'4", told me he was a rocket scientist, told me he was starting a car company. I told him he was full of shit. We drank scotch together for the evening. And when we were done, he gave me a hug. And I gave him a hug back. And I said goodbye a lot. And a couple of years go by, 3-4 years go by, and I'm at the Milken conference, and I meet this guy, Kimball Musk. And I said, I got a story for you. He came back to my home for dinner. And I said, Kimball, I'm giving you a ride in a vehicle your brother built, and I'm watching these rockets go into space. I said, I told your brother he was full of shit. And I said, I don't know if I've ever been more wrong in my whole life. I said, he told me he was a rocket scientist, and he told me he was starting a car company. I just didn't believe him. I said, I should have bought his stock.
Holy shit.
I said, you never know who you're talking to. You never know what dreams come true.
Yeah.
Now, Kimball and Elon Musk started PayPal. You meet people in your life. Some of them can be on the spectrum. Some of them can really be on the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
You look at opportunity differently, and you look at values differently.
Mm-hmm.
And you ever have a 35 millimeter camera?
Yeah.
You ever hear of something called parallax error?
No.
Parallax error is the difference between what you see in the viewfinder and what you get on the film. That's parallax error.
Got it.
In psychology, we have parallax error too. I might consider myself a really great guy and a nice guy, but the world might consider me an asshole.
Uh-huh.
So that's parallax error. If I consider myself an asshole and the rest of the world thinks I'm an asshole, well, at least there's similarity in the way I perceive myself and the way other people perceive me.
Self-awareness there.
Yeah. That's kind of important.
What's an example of when you thought outside of the box? I mean, clearly that house purchase is one, but what's another big example of where you had to get creative with making something happen and it worked out in your benefit?
1978, I meet David Oved, an architect from Israel. And he had a listing. He had a property. He had a property that he wanted to sell. And
You were cold calling him.
I was cold calling.
Okay.
Back then, you had the LA Times. People would put for sale by owner.
Yeah.
You also had the recycler for cheap people that wanted free advertising. I think he had a little tiny ad in the recycler, which I bought on a Thursday looking to buy cars to flip. I used to buy the Sunday LA Times on Saturday and buy the cars on Saturday, not Sunday, because I'd get the paper early and make the first calls early and have the first opportunity. And I'd show up and say, I had a couple hundred Datsun 240Zs, 71, 72, those were the best years. And I'd show up and say, look, I'm a student, I'm young, I got 2,000, I know you want 2,500, $3,000, but this is all I'm willing to pay. I said, and if you sign the ownership certificate, you can move it right now, here's the cash. A lot of people would say, take it. 3 days later, it'd be back in the paper. And I'd sell it for $2,900. I make my money onto something else. And I was running a lot of cars. But back to David Oved. He wanted to sell this building at 1337 Santa Monica Mall, 3rd Street Promenade. And it had a 5 and dime on the ground floor and had a law store group on the 2nd and 3rd floors. He wanted a market rate cap. And I said, you know what, David, I think I can sell this property for you. Give me an opportunity. He says, yeah, but you really haven't been around very long. You really don't know what you're doing. I said, I'm going to be the best broker you've ever seen. Give me an opportunity. He says, well, you're not shy. Go ahead. Here's the listing, 6 months. Sell it. And he had a partner, Igal Trebach. Brilliant guy. And they gave me this listing. I marketed the property and I called up other owners. And finally, there was an agent over at CBRE who had a client. His name was Enos Sifsi. We called him jokingly Enos the Penis. And Enos was from Turkey, and he had scars up and down both of his arms from his times in a Turkish prison. And he was married to this woman who I think was one of the wealthiest families from Turkey.
Wow.
And he wanted to buy the building. And he was represented by CBRE. And he invited me to his boat in the Mediterranean. And I really appreciated the opportunity to go. I didn't go. I said, thank you. We'll do more business. You're represented by CBRE. That I don't want there to be a conflict, but life is long. And I did go to his home in Beverly Hills. He showed me his hand grenade collection with the Uzis on the wall. And he was really a character and fun, really a fun guy.
Yeah.
And, but the Uzis and the scars on his arms, I'm thinking, I'm glad he likes me.
Yeah.
So he buys this building. And again, CBRE represented his interests. I represented David Oved and Igal. And 30 days later, he calls me up and he said, you misrepresented the property. The 5 and dime is now not paying rent. The law store group is not paying the rent. You really need to tell me why you did this to me. And I said, Enos, I didn't represent you. CBRE represented you. I said, I represented David Oved and Igal Trebach, and didn't I do a great job? He says, I got a problem, and now you have a problem. I'm going to give you a listing. Clean this up for me. And I said, okay. So I complete the eviction on the ground floor tenant. I complete the eviction on the law store group. You ever evict a law firm?
No.
Yeah. Well, that was my first. And I have this empty building, and I bring him an offer to lease part of the 2nd floor from Tom Hayden, who was very liberal, married to Jane Fonda at the time. And I bring this offer. He was a councilman to lease the part of the 2nd floor, and Enos says, why would I give this communist my space? Why would I rent to this guy in my building? I said, Enos, let me explain it to you. Your building's worth a lot less than what you bought it for. Put him in. If you're lucky, it'll get bombed. He was laughing so hard, he signed the lease.
Oh,
Then I moved in an abortion clinic, free legal aid. I moved in a group of psychologists. I filled up the whole building. And someone came along, bought the property. He was almost made whole.
wow.
We had a great relationship from that experience.
Jeez.
Great relationship from him. A few years later, we had an earthquake and the building fell down. And then it was rebuilt. And Walt Disney became the tenant for the whole property. So the 3rd Street Promenade became very valuable.
Yeah.
And at one point, the rents were $20 a foot. It's a month. I mean, it was very valuable. Today, it's less than $5, and it's 50%. The whole street, 3rd Street Promenade, 50% empty. They just passed last week.
I saw that.
Open containers.
Yep.
Why not heroin and needles? You should hand that out too. 3 years ago, I was having lunch on the 3rd Street Promenade. I got up, went to the bathroom, came back. There was a homeless person finishing my lunch. I called over the waiter. I said, give him dessert. Here's my credit card. And have I been back? No.
Yeah.
No. They can't control the homelessness. You think you're going to get 10 or 15 or 20 bucks per month in rent when the homeless have taken over
Yeah.
the crime, the drugs, the other issues? It's a nightmare.
How do we fix Santa Monica?
Well, that's, how long do you want to talk for?
I know you have opinions on.
Money has wheels.
Yeah.
Opportunity has wheels. And if you create the problems and the roadblocks, the money goes elsewhere.
Well, it seems like California is doing a lot of that.
I'm in escrow right now in my 13th shopping center in the state of Arizona. I have 5 apartment buildings there. Money has wheels.
Mm-hmm.
You make life too difficult. You think you're going to build housing for $1 million a unit to rent out for $400, $500 a month? I'm the named plaintiff on a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles, against the trash companies. The city of Los Angeles broke the pickup of trash, commercial pickup, into 11 zones, handing 7 of them to waste management. Now, the first thing that happened to me as a property owner is my trash fees went up 400%. So you sell apartment buildings. We have the highest trash costs, maybe in the country. And the only thing worse is probably DWP, because we have the highest water bills in the country. What does DWP and waste management have in common?
Monopoly?
They are both monopolistic. The 11 zones, 7 of which are waste management, and I'll use the word kick back to the city council, $25 million a year, unrestricted funds. I don't even know how much DWP kicks back, unrestricted funds. So as a named plaintiff, we lost our rounds in the lower court. We appealed to the state Supreme Court. We were then remanded back to the lower court. And through settlement negotiations, which I turned down, I'm not willing to settle for $1 billion with the monies going back to the apartment house owners, with the rates staying where they are and without having a choice of what trash company I can go to.
Yeah.
So I know it would be a windfall for my counsel. I'm sorry, counsel, for being so difficult. But we want there to be a fair traded opportunity for trash.
Yeah.
Now, on the apartment building side, which you deal with every day,
Yep.
you're going to cap me at 4% or 3% a year on increases, but no cap on DWP, which bumps us 40% this year.
Yeah.
No cap on insurance. All the insurance companies are leaving. But if you can get insurance, you're talking about 50 to 100% increase with carve-outs for like habitability and lead and mold and other carve-outs. If you're going to talk about other costs associated with operating affordable housing, that's what I do. I operate affordable housing. How am I going to operate affordable housing when you make it unaffordable for me to operate my affordable housing? Yet the city council members can't figure out that as they squeeze the life out of the property owners and values continue to drop because there's no net operating income. And during COVID, you don't allow us to collect rent for 3 years. So that cost me $7 million. Do you think I'm not going to take my money and go out of state?
Yeah.
You
I
think you're
would.
going to motivate me for building ADUs and other affordable housing in this state? No.
So, okay, then let's play a little game. If you were starting from zero, right? $0, you're 21 years old, or I guess you could be in high school, whatever you want to say,
Or 61.
or 61. You're starting from zero real estate, but you have your brain, right? Where are you investing? What are you doing to build up what you currently have today?
Taylor, that's a very important, great question. Great question.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm still a buyer in Los Angeles. Yes, I'm still a buyer in Compton and the inner city. I'm still a buyer in Beverly Hills. I built the CVS at Wilshire and Doheny. They're my tenant. I just renewed with them for another 20 years. I like CVS. I like Rite Aid a little bit less, but it doesn't matter anymore, does it? Why am I still a buyer where there's less opportunity? I'm a situational opportunist. Now, what does that mean? Give me a situation, give me a reason to buy. But now the reason and the opportunity costs are different. So you take away my opportunity value, and now all of a sudden the property drops. You take away my ability to operate clean, decent, affordable housing, and now all of a sudden the value of that asset goes down. You pass something like ULA, which is a ridiculous tax.
Mm-hmm.
And now all of a sudden people can't sell or won't sell. And you have, without mentioning names, Karen Bass and others, that say, look, it's only 5% or 10%, but it isn't.
Uh-huh.
Because if it's $1 million asset or $5 million asset and you're putting 20 or 25% down, all of a sudden that 5% on that 20% or that 5% on the 25% is a substantial amount of your investment that you lose from day one.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tax that is against business and against opportunity, and it is a tax that brings business down and brings investors elsewhere. It is regressive, and it is dangerous, and it's a bad example of what council members should not do if they care about this city.
So what would you do? You're starting from zero.
I start lowering the prices of what I'm willing to pay, because now these properties have less opportunity for future investment. Doesn't mean I'm not willing to buy.
Yeah.
It means I'm paying less now.
So if you were me, right? Let's say I'm 29 years old. I want to become Fred Leeds in 40 years. Principal. You say focus on a niche area, focus on a specific asset type. How do I get the skills? What are you telling me in terms of the steps I need to take?
Taylor, get
to
up
be
at
successful?
4:25 a.m. Get out of your house by 4:45.
I'm going to see my
Be at the gym at 5 o'clock. 5:15, hit the streets with your buddies, argue about politics, wake up the neighborhood, make friends, bring them in as partners, syndicate deals, find value-added opportunity. I raised more money at Equinox, which used to be called Sports Club, than anybody, including Michael Talla, who used to say to me, Fred, you're making more money than I am, and I own the place. So, what would I do?
Yeah.
There's opportunity. Keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
Look for deals. I bought on Sunset and Vine a place that repaired tires. And I signed a long-term lease with Ron Resch Polster, who inherited a business called Freestyle Camera. And it was right as the internet was coming in. And we built this magnificent building, which he could not occupy.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my partner on the development deal. So I had to find a tenant real fast. My construction loan was coming due, which was near $6 million. And my tenant wasn't moving in. And now I got a problem, a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a offer from this business called Amoeba Records. Ever go to Amoeba Records?
I have.
I built that building.
Really?
Sunset and Vine. I get a call from this broker, and because I had signs up that said available. They said they don't want to lease it, they want to buy it. Would you sell it? I said, yes, I would consider selling. So they brought me an offer for $6 million. And now I can get out, and I don't lose my financial statement on a construction loan that's come due. So I give him a counter offer. My partner says, Fred, let the property go. Take it. You deal with the problem with your partner, with Ron Resch. And you deal with the construction loan that's coming due, and everything's resolved. I said, okay. So I give him a counter offer. $9 million. I don't work for nothing. And we put so much rebar in that building that the load factor was better than a freeway overpass. And what did you need for Amoeba Records? You needed load factor because the floors had to handle a tremendous amount of weight.
Mm-hmm.
Those vinyl records are very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, we have this specialized building. Where are they going to go? So they reached me and said, look, we'll take that offer, that $9 million. Let's open the escrow. I said, wait a minute, that's $9 million net. So they came back to me. They said, all right, $9 million net. So we open up the escrow and get ready to close. And I asked for a pre-closing statement. And I called up the escrow company. I said, that was $9 million net. I said, those escrow fees, the seller isn't paying. The buyer pays. Those title fees, the buyer pays. That's $9 million net. So I got $9 million net. And we did an IRS 1031 exchange. You're familiar with that.
Yep.
You see, it's not just making the money, it's keeping the money.
Yeah.
I don't build houses. I don't build condos because of construction defect litigation, which runs 10 years. I don't want to be part of a lawyer's relief fund.
Mm-hmm.
And I deal with lawyers every day. And it's part of doing business in California. It's not see you later, it's sue you later.
Mm-hmm.
And often it is. But the tax ramifications as can be as ugly or uglier than the ramifications of litigation with construction defect litigation.
Mm-hmm.
So I stay away from, and there are plenty of people that want to build these houses and condos. Mm-hmm. I don't. I stay away from it.
Got it.
And I ended up doing a IRS 1031 exchange into the Hornburg Jaguar repair facility on Olympic and Centinela for $9.25 million.
How'd you find it?
One of the most brilliant agents and brokers, Blake Milken, CBRE, had the listing. It had 1 year remaining on the lease. He was having a hard time finding a buyer for it. And the tenant repaired Jaguars. Now, Taylor, go to Mercedes on a Monday morning at 6:30 a.m. And the cars are lining up to go in, but they're driving in. Go to Jaguar, 6:30 in the morning on a Monday, and the Jaguars are lining up, but they're being flatbedded in. You want a car company that will always need repairs.
Yep.
We're talking about Jaguar, Range Rover.
Yes.
And they used to use Lucas Electrical, right?
Oh.
All their wiring, Lucas Electrical. The Germans during World War II decided not to bomb the Lucas factory. They decided Lucas was on their side. The reason why the English drink warm beer is Lucas refrigeration.
Jeez.
So I made this offer, and they accepted it. I bought this property, 60,000 square feet on 106,000 square feet of land. It's the last property in the city of Santa Monica. From the sidewalk going east is LA City, corner of Olympic and Centinela. Centinela actually tees into this property. And a year later, the Hornburg family sold out to Pendragon PLC, which has 300 auto dealerships in Europe, publicly traded. They fly this guy out, Malcolm Bailey, sits down with me. We have lunch. He says, we want to renew the lease. What do you want for rent? We're currently paying $50,000. What do you want for rent? But before you tell me that, Fred, what's your favorite car in the world? It's my favorite car. Aston Martin Vanquish S. It's what James Bond drives. So would you like one? I said, Malcolm, I drive a Cadillac. There's no conflict of interest. Let's talk about the lease. If I want one, I'll buy one.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about the lease. He said, what do you want? I said, I want $100,000 a month. He said, we won't pay it. I said, we'll still be good friends. So he signs a lease half a mile away for the, on Stewart. There was a ballpoint pen building. And subject to the demands of the city of Santa Monica. Now, if you know Santa Monica, they don't want auto repair. They want production facilities. They want high tech. They want writers and directors. They want the kind of businesses that are brain related, not back related. And they sent by their inspectors and they inspected the property, and Pendragon hires a contractor, and the bid comes in comes back in, this is in the early 2000s, comes back in at $7 million. So Malcolm calls me up, he says, I'm flying out, Fred, I need to talk to you. Flies out from London. Says, Fred, would you be willing to step up that rent over a period of time? I said, sure, Malcolm. So over a period of time, then it became $100,000.
Wow.
We were collecting $100,000 a month. And after 10 years, he flies back out. He says, okay, what do you want? He knew what I knew. The barriers of moving the business is so extreme that I had a captive audience. And the people that looked at this asset couldn't figure that out. Maybe I was lucky enough from flipping cars to know how important that repair facility was.
Jeez.
Today, they're paying $170,000 a month. But what's interesting about that deal is the dirt at 106,000 square feet at $600 a foot or more is worth north of $70 million. I paid $9.25 million for it. The value is in the dirt because I can build 600 or 700 or 800 units, and it backs up to the Metro Rail, which has value. And for the city of Santa Monica, they get the revenue. The traffic goes to the city of Los Angeles. So it's a win-win location.
Wow.
I've elected to renew. I have a single tenant. And if you assign a capitalization rate versus looking at the value of the dirt, again, the value is in that $70 million range. So I've done okay with it.
Jeez.
Back to I'd rather be lucky than smart. You know, an idiot can throw a stone where a genius can't find it.
Yeah. You are very, very much like you find opportunities where other people miss it. And I want to bring that up to brokerage selfishly, because I'm gonna be a little selfish here, because you clearly did very well as a broker. If you had to become, again, the number one broker in the city of Los Angeles, how would you structure your day? What would it look like? How would you become that number one person?
Taylor, I'm going to make that question a little bit different.
Please.
I'm gonna respond by saying you could drop me off in any city in the country, and I will learn what that city produces, what the city stands for, what the politics are in that city, the demographics, whether the city's growing or shrinking, what the opportunities are, whether I want to go long or short. You know, when the stock market drops, not everyone loses money. If you're shorting the stock market and it goes down, you're making money. You just have to bet on the right side of the equation. And I'm going to work harder than anyone. I'm going to know every building. You could say green building, white fence. I'll give you the address, the debt, when they bought it, and, you know, what the highest and best use is. You know, many years ago, I got a call from a broker from San Francisco. Broker said, my aunt has owned this property in Compton for 60 years. She wants a market rate cap deal, $1 million. It's on Alondra and Wilmington. There's a Five and Dime, there's a fast food on the corner, and there's a Head Start school. And here's the income stream. Market rate cap deal is $1 million. Would you have any interest in buying it? I said, you know, let me call you back this afternoon. Hung up, got on my broom, went out to Compton, looked at the property, went back to my office, called up the agent, and said, if you can give me an executed deposit receipt and escrow instructions today, I'll give you $1,050,000 for it. $50,000 over and above what you're asking. It's got to be today. He says, I can do that. My aunt's available. We can open up the escrow and we'll do it. And so I bought the property, but it was on $3 million worth of dirt. So he analyzed the asset on an income stream.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't take into consideration it was on many acres.
Mm.
So often you find people that think that they understand the value and you think otherwise. It doesn't make you right, doesn't make them wrong. But in this instant, I was right.
How do you study? How do you educate yourself to be a master of your craft?
Well, we'll go back by saying common sense is not common. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are two sayings I really believe in, Taylor.
Okay.
I'm going to share them with you.
Okay.
Number one, the meek shall inherit the earth, but not the oil rights. And number two, all men are created equal, some more equal than others. You have the ability to play tennis. I can't play that like you can.
Mm-hmm.
You're taller than I am. You have longer arms. You have a better reach. You're more athletic. You're younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if I compete with you, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
But I recognize that. So if I compete with you, I'm going to make you use the other arm
Uh-huh.
and handicap you and tie your legs together and probably still lose. So I want 4 games out of 6.
Yeah.
And that's why they're horse races. So I'm going to look for an opportunity where I can compete. And you got to have the ability to understand value. How do you understand value when so many people don't?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are 3 ways to determine value of the income approach, the cost approach, and the market approach. That's real estate 101.
Mm-hmm.
How many people can't figure out which approach to take? My house looks just like your house. Your house sold for X 3 months ago. Therefore, what's my house worth? X? Yes. But there are other variables as well, except for my house is on twice the land area.
Mm-hmm.
And your house is closer to the street, more noise. So, you know, there are variables that you have to take into consideration.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you 9 out of 10 appraisals I look at are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to understand also the direction of the market. Are interest rates moving up? Are interest rates moving down? Well, when interest rates move up, prices usually move down. You have net operating income. It only goes so far. I look at new construction today. It's a loser. Why? New construction, in order to break even, you got to get $5 a square foot. So 600 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, right? New construction.
Mm-hmm.
You got to get $3,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
To qualify, 3 to 4x, 9,000 to 12,000 adjusted income, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to make over 100,000 a year to live in Hollywood in a 1-bedroom apartment where you're going to step over needles and human feces.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound like something you want to spend $3,000 a month for?
No.
I go out to Bullhead City, Arizona. If you're flipping hamburgers, you're making $14 an hour. Here it's 20.
Yeah.
But $14 an hour, roughly $30,000 a year, flipping burgers. You can rent a 1-bedroom apartment for $700 a month, and guess what? You can afford to flip burgers and have a life.
Mm-hmm.
But the numbers don't work in Los Angeles. And if you want to be an employer in Los Angeles, where will your employees live?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to think not only the microeconomics of a transaction, but what are the macroeconomics? How do you see future growth when most people can't afford to live in an apartment?
Mm-hmm.
I went to a conference in Santa Monica given by the city of Santa Monica. And the city manager was there. And some of the rent control members were there. And they had a nonprofit housing developer who was there. But they had no one from private enterprise there sitting on this panel. And when they were done with the panel and asked for questions, not many people raised their hand.
Mm-hmm.
My hand went up. Just like, I'm going to tell you Michael Milken's story shortly.
Okay.
My hand went up. I said to the city manager, I said, I understand your claim to fame is you put that hoop on the middle of the park bench so homeless can't sleep on the park bench. He says, yes. And yes, I did that. I have the patent for that. So I also understand you make, $350,000 a year as a city manager. He says, well, that's public information. So here's my question. Where should the homeless sleep? I was escorted out of the room.
Wow.
So, you have to, sometimes you have to temper your thought process
Mm.
so that you don't look like the wacko you really are.
Tell me the Michael Milken story.
This is really important.
Okay.
Okay. I want you really to dive into this.
Okay.
Right. So Michael Milken was lecturing at the Milken Institute a few years back. And he was lecturing for someone who was at the conference. It was J.P. Morgan Chase. It was a nice evening. He spoke, and when he was done, asked for questions. And of course, my hand went up. I said, "Hello, Michael." And he says, "Hello, friend." I said, "Michael, I want to ask you a question that it's going to take some insight from you, and it should be very important for this group to hear." It's okay. So I want to talk to you about my favorite cartoons. I want to talk to you about the Jetsons, which was 1950. He says, "Stop." He says, "I made a mistake, Fred. Hanna-Barbera, I owned the company, should have never sold it." I said, I understand. I said, "Michael, that's not my question." I said, "Michael, here's my question. Hanna-Barbera, 1950, they projected what the world would be like in the year 2050, 100 years into the future." He says, "Okay." I said, "And they projected that the work week would be 3 hours a day, 3 days a week." This is in the Jetsons.
Mm-hmm.
Go home, watch the Jetsons. 9-hour work week. I said, "So my question is that our future?" Well, he turned it around on me. He says, "Fred, could you be happy working 9 hours a week?" I said, "Mike, I can't be happy working only 9 hours a day." But now I want you to think about that, Taylor.
Yeah.
What is our future with AI, with many of the jobs that you're most familiar with today that will be lost? What about who will you rent to? Does our country owe you a living?
Mm-hmm.
Does it owe you housing? Does it owe you money? Does it owe you medical care? Where are we going with this? Because if you bet wrong, no matter how brilliant you are in real estate, you're out of business.
Mm-hmm.
You need to figure out what others will get wrong. Mac, okay? Mac, a cab driver, Las Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
gets a $5 tip. He starts gambling, goes into a casino, starts gambling with that $5. And all of a sudden he's up over 10,000. And as he's walking away from that table, there's a voice in his head that says there's more of that where it came from. He goes back to that table. He continues to gamble, loses it all. And as he's walking out of the casino, he comes across another fellow cab driver and says, "Hey, Mac, how did you do?" And Mac says, "I lost $5. So I proposed this to my accountant. I'm the only Jewish guy I know who's a Catholic accountant. I said, "Steve, how much did Mac lose? Did he lose $5 or did he lose over 10,000? Steve was so bright. I love Steve. May he rest in peace. He passed away a couple of years ago. He says, "Fred, you want to talk about realized versus unrealized gains and losses?" I said, "No." "How much did Mac lose?" He says, "I know where we're going with this. In your sick mind, he lost over 10,000.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of people would disagree with you." I said, "And the people that would disagree with me are building those billion-dollar hotels room at a time." I said, "Yeah, he lost over 10,000. That money was his. He didn't have to give it back. Realized versus unrealized, those chips were his. That money was his. Taylor, you buy a building for $1 million and it's worth $10 million, it goes back to $1 million. How good do you feel?"
Terrible.
Terrible, right? You buy a stock, you want that stock to go up.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't go up, I don't know. It's not kumbaya.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel stupid,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
1973, before your parents were born. Pepperdine University. I applied for basic educational opportunity grants and federally insured student loans to pay for my tuition, in addition to the money I was making flipping cars. They give me $10,000 to pay my tuition. I don't pay it. I take the money and I buy Chuck Barris Productions stock. Why did I buy it? Because they just came out with a gong show and I thought it was hysterical. And they're publicly traded. I think this stock is going to go up. So I don't pay my tuition. I buy stock in Chuck Barris Productions, the Newlywed Game, the dating game, and the Gong Show. It was hysterical. It was funny. I thought, this is great. The stock triples. I sell the stock, then I pay my tuition. I paid my tuition. I held on to it as long as I could without getting thrown out of school. I just thought that the risk was worth the reward.
Mm-hmm.
I was so sure of myself. I could have bet wrong, but here I guess I was lucky enough to bet right.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make these decisions. You work hard. The most valuable commodity you have is not money. It's your time.
Mm-hmm.
When you're young, you have plenty of time and no money. We said this earlier. When you're old, you have plenty of money and no time.
Mm-hmm.
You need to utilize your time effectively.
Mm.
Effectively. And I'll say this, I got plenty of time to sleep when I'm dead. And someone like Michael Milken, the guy doesn't sleep. If you get a call from him at 4 o'clock in the morning, he's already been up 5 hours. He's unbelievable.
Jeez.
Unbelievable. When you see people that are effective in what they do, their minds just, the gears continue to turn. They find the deals. They find the opportunity. You will find the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
What a weird question I asked you. Have you ever been south of the 10 freeway before? You grew up in LA. What do you mean you've never been south of the 10 freeway? Ever been to Compton?
Yeah.
Been to Compton.
I have.
You'd be shocked how many people from Compton have never seen the Pacific Ocean. How about that?
Yeah.
Never seen the Pacific Ocean.
Before we wrap up, last question, because this is something that I think you have a very unique perspective on, being who you are and the people that you know. Of all of your relationships, all the very smart people, all of the people who are brilliant, understand what's going on, they're looking to the future, what is something that most people don't have access to, or information that they wouldn't know, that you know, or that those smart people are telling them to prepare them for the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Phenomenal question. I know how I'm going to answer it. The most important relationship will be your spouse. Love your spouse. Be honorable to your spouse. Work with your spouse. Build together with your spouse. Make your world with your spouse. No one should be more important than your spouse. Respect your spouse. Love the relationship. There's no greener pasture. When you build a life, work on that relationship every day. Someone who's not honorable to their spouse, why would they be honorable to me as a partner? Time and time again, I've seen that. You want to do well? Start at home.
Wow. Fred, thank you very much. This was incredible.
Honored to be here, and hopefully, maybe one day you'll invite me back.
I think that will have to be the case.
Thank you.
Thank you, Fred. Appreciate it.
All right.